Everyone wants to know what AI engineers actually make, not the Glassdoor estimates, not the LinkedIn flexes, the real number. So I'm going to show you mine. The pay stub, the expenses, everything. I went from no tech background, film and 3D animation, to having Apple, Meta, Netflix, Amazon, all in my inbox trying to hire me. This video is what that actually looks like financially. But here's the thing, what you make matters way less than what you keep. And I've seen engineers earning way more than me who are somehow still broke. Today, I'm taking you through the full breakdown. Let's get into it. Before I get into the numbers, I want to explain the context. Nobody showed me this when I was coming up, getting into AI. Most people hide their numbers. Most people in tech hide their real numbers. And I would say that's usually a disservice for you, because what happens during your negotiations phase, you don't know how much you're worth. And basically, full transparency, if you know how much you're worth or what your goal will be, you could actually set real goals to actually try to achieve them. So you know, okay, if I learn these things, I can expect to get this compensation from these type of companies. And my background was 3D film, like 3D CG, AAA games. And I didn't have specifically a computer science degree in that. And even when I first started my coding classes, I quit the first time because I was the only person in the room that didn't understand coding. But even now on LinkedIn itself, its companies are required to put salary ranges in there, so people know how much you're worth, how much you're putting into for even the company itself. You could tell if one company is trying to undersell you versus another one, and how much you're expected to do. Some roles expect you to do a lot more data science stuff, collecting at the beginning. Plus, you have to do the machine learning. Some of them, you're just applying the AI engineering stuff. Whereas at other companies, each one of those roles are separate jobs. So, but if you're not getting triple the pay of that, you're basically not, you could find your worth at another company, basically that acknowledge these things. And this is why it's very good to know what your salary is, how much you're worth, and the expectation to see if it even aligns up for the company. Because a lot of the companies that are actually looking for AI now are not tech companies. So, and they know they're willing to pay if you're able to solve their problem. So it's really good to know in each industry how much it's worth. Okay, so let's break down the income here. So base salary now would be 200K plus total annual compensation, and that's base. So there's base versus stock versus bonuses, right? A lot of times when you have base, a lot of projects, at least the ones I take on with AI, is that you're trying to solve a problem that haven't really been solved yet, right? So you don't really know the parameters, and things get adjusted while the project happens if you stay on for a longer time. So the base salary is usually like this amount. And as things progress and the value, and you show how much value you bring into it, usually you get compensated either more annually. But again, this depends as well on the project, the type of data, how much value it is. And a big thing as well is where you're located. You could live, let's say, in the States, and depending what state you're in, you have a different cost of living there, right? So you might hear someone making like 200K on one state, and another one might be making 300K, but the person making 200K is actually, with taking into consideration the cost of living and other factors, is actually winning out more than the other person, just because of the location and what's expected and whatnot, right? The other thing as well is you can negotiate depending, especially if you're, let's say in startups, for example, a lot of times they can't match the higher, I would say, salaries that they required for the required talent for it. So what they do instead is try to match it in stock, or like a lot of it's ESOP, especially if you're a key person. So employee stock option, right? So what happens is that you get, as usually you get stock, like in, well, depending how it's set up, you get stock in the company, and over time, as the value increases, your stock increases, which would definitely be a lot more than your base salary over time. Granted that the project's actually successful and you make a successful product out of it, right? So that's the trade-off. And I know a lot of people rather upfront take more of the base salary and their annual salary and take home and have just a better quality of life. But the thing is, if the company actually goes through the roof, then you don't really see the upside of your stock from there. And the other thing as well is stock usually is vested, meaning that they don't give it to you all in one shot. Over time, it's unlocked the longer you stay with the company, or they might give you more options based on your performance as well. So that is more of a way to keep to have retention of employees, or especially their skilled ones, to stay there, as opposed to they gave this base salary, or they boost it because they put more, so they make a lot more and use that as leverage to try to get to another company and they pay them more. So that's another thing to consider. So it's not always just the base salary, it's also all these other things, their location and whatnot. And then the other thing is bonuses as well, especially if a project does really, really well. Some people, I know, got 100% bonus because of a project, meaning that if you made this salary and then the project did really, really well, they get all that one lump sum if it's 100%. Some of them might be 20%, 25, depends what it is, depending on your impact on it, right? So all of these things, stock options, bonuses, your location, cost of living, all those play a factor. So you can't just look at the the salary, annual salary alone. But this is kind of like typical that you kind of would see, or I would say common, you would see, right? As a benchmark, right? For me, it took me about 10 years to get to, and I'm not saying it takes 10 years for everybody. It's just that the path that came around for this to came around, because at the time, AI engineers didn't really exist. It was more of how when I started, I was in the film and 3D industry, and one of the problems I had to solve, I saw a paper that actually used AI to approach the problem, which haven't really been done in that industry at the time. But at the time, it was just the theoretical paper, so I had to actually take that and implement it myself. So I took months to learn how to do that. Then I saw it was pretty much the future because it worked, the project worked, and then I saw the impact it had on it. And since then, from that time, when I say took 10 years, I started looking more into AI and learning different things like supervised learning, unsupervised learning, reinforcement learning, and then convolution networks came out, then transformers, I think also the memory ones like LSTMs, but before transformers came out, and like GAN network and then generative AI, all these things are happening so fast. We have to learn it. And now it doesn't need to take 10 years because all during the last decade, all these models have been developed. You can now, you don't have to make them yourself. You just put them together. So now I would see AI engineering. Now it's pretty much software engineering. Now you're just using AI models into it. So that's where I would say it is now. So it's actually a lot easier. You just have to understand what it needs to be done. And the most important thing is having the impact for the company, right? So how I got here, like again, this was not an overnight thing. This was looking at it, applying myself for it, and and actually putting it into practice and getting real results, right? Once I actually started using that in the industry and I started learning more about AI, I actually did apply for an AI specific job as opposed to my industry, which is like 3D and film and like AAA games and whatnot, and putting using AI solutions in there. I actually started looking for AI jobs specifically, and one of the first one, especially back then, is actually building stock market prediction models with it, right? And it was really helpful there because you pretty much just say like, here, just build a model that outperforms what we already have. If it works, then we'll use it. If not, then it won't be used, right? So you had to deal with real world conditions. So you built real projects, and basically, I was able to position myself correctly with that because I was already working, solving AI, using AI to solve problems in another industry, but I was solving it and showing that I was able to apply it given a certain context, a certain problem. That's what made it more attractive to companies, and not just like doing tutorials. Like, oh, you're working at a real company, you use AI, you actually had a real impact, and we want to do that. You show that you have critical thinking, you have the ability and self discipline to go take that information, see our problem in our space, and come up with a solution. So that is what mainly sticks out and the takeaway from that. And since then, Apple, Meta, Netflix, Amazon all reached out to hire me based off of I never actually applied to them. The emails would be like, "Hey, we saw that you had experience in this space working at these companies. We have a project that's interesting that we think you'll be might be interested in, basically, right?" Or get recommended by other people that worked in the space. So the thing is about that is that the roadmap matters a lot more than just raw talent, because you have to know the actual subjects, but actually apply it and in a format or in a capacity that is actually attractive for major companies to want to look at you and hire you to show like, hey, in these real world scenarios, you're able to deliver and actually have an impact on the company. We want someone like that. One thing I want to bring up is the tax reality. Again, you're hearing these numbers like making to over 200K, but remember, because of taxes, you have federal taxes, especially at this bracket, is pretty significant, right? And then there's also state taxes, unless you live in like a state like Florida or something like that. So you don't take home that full 200K, not even close to that. So you have to consider that and factor that in as well. So when you hear these numbers, you actually have to take that into account. Also, cost of living plus all the other expenses. Because of cost of living, if you live in a certain area and you have certain taxes, that number, like I said before, someone could live in one state and make a lot more money, but because of cost of living and the taxes, and you have state taxes versus how much fast state taxes versus some others where you don't have it at all, that number will significantly affect where that the meaning of that salary. Plus also the quality of life as well too. You can make a lot of money, but like in a place, let's say New York or LA, where it's harder to get actual property versus another state where it's a lot easier. So you might be making less, but the quality of life, getting property or things like that might be a factor as well that you want to take into consideration. Here's definitely a thing to consider: the fixed expenses. I talked about it earlier. So again, the area you live in and where you want to go in, you want to look at things like housing, transportation, insurance, and recurring other recurring bills or payments that you have to do. For example, like housing, are you going to rent or there's a mortgage for it? Again, I mentioned things like LA, living in LA or New York versus another state or another city in another state, right? Then there's utilities and internet. I remember I was living in a state, and the utilities and internet at the time, I think I was paying like over $200 a month just for the internet at the time. And then a bigger company purchased or acquired that company, and then it went from $200 a month for better service faster down to 20. Actually, it was like less than $20 a month for it, right? So that's a significant change depending on where you're living at it, right? So even if you're making this amount of money, this is going to affect like the biggest chunk depending where you live, like your housing or your renting. So you have to consider that, right? I actually knew someone that I was working with, and they wanted to move to another state because they saw that they were making more money. But when they actually broke down the housing, transportation, and insurance, they realized that they had to make much, much more money to have the same quality of life because of the taxes, because of the rent and the mortgage that was there, the utility cost, the average utility cost. And also they had schooling for their children and the cost of that. And if they're going to go private school or public, depending as well how good the education is there. So that all take into kind of consideration. Also, as well, you might be able to, let's say you do have housing in the area, right? Now you have to think of transportation, because some areas, for example, where you work might be more urban, but you want to live in a suburban area, so you want to get a house, but the house is not in that area, so you might have to commute. So now you have to start looking at transportation, car situation. Are you able to take public transit? Some places don't have that, right? So you don't have that option. Or even if you do you want to be on public transit for an hour or two a day? That takes to your time and quality of life. And also that also affects your relationships with other people that you have, either your partner or your children or whatnot. Are you able to attend their activities, things like that you have to look into, right? And now if you start getting to transportation, you have to look into insurance for that, the gas, the maintenance of that as well, what type of car you're getting for that. Although if you're getting a car, all those things matter, right? And again, part of the insurance, there's a lot of recurring insurance. There's health, there's dental, there's vision, depending where you are. And I know there's different plans on all that, and there's different deductibles. All that matters as well. Does the company match that, or does it have coverage of that, or do you have to get it yourself? Then there's a phone, the subscriptions, the membership of all these things. Again, you might have that. I'm pretty sure a lot of the things that you're dealing with now, but you have to remember, especially if you're getting a position somewhere else that might make you more money, you have to reevaluate all these things because it's actually going to affect the end result of how much it is. It's going to all that's going to rebalance and refactor again. So you have to definitely take that into consideration to see if it's actually worth it for you. The other thing as well, a lot of these jobs just a few years ago, you could work remotely. Now a lot of companies require you to be on premise, on location in the area or a hybrid of that. So you have to take that into consideration of that. And even if you are working remotely, each place works differently. Do you supply your own computer yourself, or you have to get it from them? And then if you do get it encrypted, there's all those issues have to be taken into consideration. So if you get it yourself, do they cover it? Some companies do, some don't. That means that's another expense you have to take on to it. So there's a lot of things to actually consider. Another thing you have to consider is also variable expenses. So there's fixed ones that you pretty much where you're going to live in, like housing, insurance, transportation, things like that. But the other ones are variable is, for example, food. Are you a person that are going to do groceries and do you cook or do you eat out a lot? So now you're going to have to look at if you take this type of job at a certain location, can you maintain that lifestyle that you want to do? Or, especially if you're eating out a lot, this could creep up really, really fast if you're not paying attention to it, right? Or even in the areas, certain groceries or certain produce, let's say, or certain items for groceries are priced differently in different areas. So you have to take that into consideration. And also the lifestyle, right? So, your entertainment, what do you go for entertainment? Do you like to travel? Your certain hobbies, can you still maintain that or does this supply it given where you are in and and pretty much what you're doing right now, right? And the other thing is, well, that's very important, I would say, is learning and development, especially in this field, is that you should always invest in yourself, keep learning and get better. So are you able to basically invest in yourself to help push yourself further? Because things change really fast. You might be the best at what you do right now, but to maintain that, you have to stay abreast of what's important and and get the roadmaps of the people who are currently doing what you want to do or want to be able to get to and maintain your position at the top. So you have to basically take this into consideration as well. There's also other things as well where I know a few people who took on really good positions that they know it's like project based. They're going to be on it for like a year or two, maybe three. So they'll go in an area mainly to just basically lower their expenses and like sacrifice what they want to do. Let's say instead of eating out, they'll do groceries. And instead of doing entertaining things or traveling a lot, they wouldn't do it for that a certain amount of time. And they'll basically just make sure they learn and develop, they invest in that, but they basically stack the money they gained for during that project. So when they came back to other roles, they could live a better lifestyle afterwards, right? I know certain people who did that for certain projects. So that's another thing you want to consider if that is an option for you as well. The roadmap to achieve this, yes, this income is actually accessible with the right path. It's not about being a genius. It's really about like the skills and positioning that matters a lot more than the actual credentials. Yes, credentials might get you looked at, but it's more of, okay, well, what have you done with that? Right? It's more of basically what impact you have and how that actually is going to impact our company for it to make worth our while. That's what you want to show. So I got there from coming from film and 3D animation. So the path exists for you as well. The main thing is that I took that and I was actually was able to apply AI solutions in my space first to show that in real world scenarios it could work. And then I saw the power of AI solution and I saw it as a future. In fact, during all our pretty much the State of the Union when they have the all hands meetings at companies and they're showing where the future of the company is going. They all show their like 5-year roadmap and they're showing that there's a lot more automation being done. And this is before AI was a thing. Companies are actively relying on AI to actually have a much bigger impact on their company and on their solutions. Even before it was there, they were predicting that. And the company doesn't necessarily even have to be a tech company. So the thing is, if you're coming from a specific discipline or domain, that is very helpful to you because at least you know the pain points and what success looks like in that space. And if you could apply an AI solution to that, you become very important because you could show the business the business need of your AI solution and the impact you could have on that. So definitely it exists for you. That's going to matter way more than credentials just because you have that a certain certificate. If you can show that you actually have an impact for the company, you're going to be a lot more valuable to them. And your industry and your domain expertise is your superpower in this case. The mindset I want to basically highlight and for you to get into this specific mindset is like, yes, even like a 400K position and more is real, and the path to get there is real, but you also have to consider other things as well, right? Because are you willing to take a much higher base salary, but you're not going to take any stock options, or you could take a lower one, but you have a better bonus structure where you could match even 100%. Now, again, not everyone does that, but maybe 20 or 30%, that might be good enough for your needs. Or the cost of living or where you're living, the quality of life, all that matters as well. And whether you're trading off for that, if you're going to a certain area or the public school is good enough, or do you have to send it a private, all these things matter as well, right? So the number alone doesn't just tell you the whole story. You have to take things into consideration. And I'm giving this full transparency because I wish I knew this stuff before going into it. So you could basically make a strategy or strategically choose your options that you could choose from that are offered to you and make a decision on that, especially if do you get the salary, but do you have to relocate, right? Is it a short-term project, or can you still live where you are, but make that type of salary? All these things matter as well. You just need to know what is possible, and you know that it is possible. So the thing about this is like, what are you going to do about this?